Welcome to Treasure Valley Data Enthusiasts group. This is the group formerly known as Boise Data Governance and also Treasure Valley Data Vault Enthusiasts. So we kind of merged those two, and this will be the last time you have to hear me say that because I'm not going to say that in the new year anymore. We're just going to be the TVDE group. So for those of you who are new to the group, if you are not receiving my emails or invitations directly, then send me an email and I'll add you to the list. And you can get on those directly. We are recording today, and we don't yet have a January topic. So if you would like to share, we would love to hear. Or if you have specific questions or a topic that you would like us to potentially consider, please let me know. There's my email. With that, we'll get right into today's topic for December 2020. We're going to be talking specifically this time about Datavault. We used to have the Datavault group specifically, and then the data governance group separately, but we're really focused on that Datavault, and it really applies to everyone in this industry because it's really taking the industry, I won't say by storm, but there's a growing population, and it seems to be more mainstream. Even some of the mainstream research entities in our industry have started to recognize Datavault as a leading practice in the data warehousing and data modeling spaces. So today we're going to talk about what works for you. There's several organizations here in the Valley, 5 or 6 that I know of, that are practicing Datavault, and several others that are considering. So we want to talk about what works and what doesn't, and answer people's questions as they come along. So I'm going to present a slide or two here just to bring everybody up to speed, get some terminology defined and so on, do a quick little intro to Datavault, and then we'll dive into what I hope is a discussion, and so you don't just have to listen to me for the whole hour. So what is Datavault? So Datavault is, it was invented by Dan Lindstedt a couple decades ago, and he's written a book or two about it, and in coordination with the father of the data warehouse, Bill Inman. And Bill is now saying, you know, if I'd written the book in the first place, I'd have just written the Datavault book. He said that it is taking the place of his methodology or the way that the corporate information factory and so on. He said it's replacing that. It's a better way of building a data warehouse. So I hope I'm not murdering the paraphrase of his quote, but he did add to his tenets of the data warehouse definition. He added integrated on business keys at the Datavault conference a couple of years ago that he was the keynote speaker at, and he did that in order to say, really, to build the data warehouse, you need to have it integrated on business keys, and Datavault does that for us. But what is Datavault? So it's an architecture, and I put an example up there above. It's an architecture with layers that have their benefits. We'll go into that more later. It's a model. It's hubs, satellites, and links. Probably most of you know that already, but it's reducing the complexity in-house down to really basically 3 types of entities: those that define their keys, those that define the relationships, and then those that describe those keys and relationships. And then it's also a methodology. It introduces an iterative approach to building your data warehouse. As Dan Lindstedt's book is entitled, it says Building an Agile Data Warehouse with Datavault 2.0. Okay, so the idea is you can iterate. You don't have to have everything figured out before you start building. You don't have to have all your requirements. You can start with your base requirements or core entities and then build them out as you go without major amounts of rework. So why is its popularity growing? I think we've already kind of touched on that, and I think that it's because it's pragmatic. It makes sense to the business. You can put a Datavault model in front of the business, and they inherently understand that. You don't have to go through training to interpret a Datavault model. Now, there's a significant amount of training, many of you have already had it, to build one, because there's an art to it. But to understand a Datavault model is fairly straightforward. We'll have an example here in a second. Who is using it locally? I'm not going to name them all, but there's, like I said, at least 5 organizations. Some of the major players in this valley have adopted the Datavault methods, and so we're here today to talk to them and with them, and anyone else who has questions about the process of building a Datavault and what you have to go through and what you have to think about. So with that in mind, I'm going to present what we here at infoVia, and I'm founder of infoVia. We publish this as our data warehouse reference, our architecture. You won't see anything surprising here. Any data warehouse has these general components, except maybe here in the data warehouse segment of it. But generally, you always have many sources from your ERPs and your partner accounts and your customer relationship management systems and so on, right? And those all land somewhere in your data warehouse platform, whether that's on the cloud or on-prem, okay? And then you have some transient staging area, and then you load it into your warehouse. Well, Datavault does do some separation of entities within the warehouse. It says you should always keep your raw data as it is. You should not transform raw data coming in because you need it to stay the way it is for auditability's sake. And especially if you're in a financial industry or insurance or something like that, where you need direct auditability. You don't want to be changing things on the way in. So the raw vault keeps things the way they are, but it starts to abstract them away from source system terminology and naming into business concepts. Okay, so it starts to align it with the business already without modifying the data. Then you have your business data vault over that, which starts to introduce your business rules and your business naming conventions. Okay. And then you have your info marts, they're called. This is where the users interact with the data. They create their cubes and their BI, point their BI tools at this, or their machine learning models or whatever. They're against these info marts. And oftentimes these are dimensional or third normal form. Sometimes people create flat views or tables in there, but in general, that's how the users interact with the data. Although sometimes they interact with raw and business vault, but in general, it's the infomarts where they're consuming that data with whatever visualizations or applications you have out here to the right. Any questions on that? I'll pause. Clear as mud. Okay. Oh, I like to plug this in because we introduced the concept of security, and we say security is a business rule tool. And if you put your security in your data warehouse, then everything downstream gets the benefit of that security. And we've done that with some of you on the call here, and we're in the process of doing that in engagements. And I just believe that that's a tenet that we can't overlook. If we save security until the end, then the cat's already out of the bag. So so that's something we've learned, is create security as a business rule within your data platform, and you'll achieve good results in terms of being able to share data appropriately and efficiently and consistently. All right, so that's the Datavault architecture. Now what about the Datavault model? Okay, so everybody's heard the hub, satellites, and links. So what's a hub? A hub is simply a unique list of business keys for each business concept that's represented. So if you have a product and a customer relationship, maybe components that make up that product, you would have a hub for each one of those. And generally hubs are shown as blue in the Datavault methodology. That color is generally associated with hubs, okay? Now the magic about that is just the way we visually represent. Links are represented in red, and they represent the relationship between entities. And they may be between 2 entities, or they may be between 10 entities. A link can relate any number of entities. That's kind of the art of the data modeling that goes into that. Now let's talk about the iterations. I said that you could build the Datavault iteratively over time. So let's say you want to introduce an order and a payment method. Each of those are business concepts. They become hubs. They have their distinct list of entities that make those, order numbers or payment methods that make those up. And here we have now the relationships between those. Each order has a payment method, but here we have a three-way link between the customer, the product, and the order, okay? So that order relates a customer to a product at some point in time, all right? So that's hubs and links. And then the third entity, the third main entity in a data vault, there's some other extended entities, but the third main one now is the satellites. And the satellites then describe a given hub. And all hubs have a satellite, at least one. Some links also have satellites. The satellites describe what's happening at that to that entity or to the individual rows within that entity. So here you might have a customer that has general information, and the status of the customer might be in its own satellite. You might have customer contact information. It may be in the general satellite, but in this case, we've broken it out into a separate one. You might have security information that surrounds that customer. We've chosen to break that out. So you can have any number of satellites. I would say 1 to n satellites. It doesn't make sense to have a hub without a satellite, really. That would insinuate that there's nothing describing that hub. The satellites also capture the history. And so you have, as those attributes change over time, it writes new rows with an insert-only methodology or method, writes new rows to those satellites. Okay, and then you can continue to add on if you end up with a new source, for example, and customers, you have new descriptive attributes for customers or products. You can add more satellites, and so your data vault becomes additive. So it's integrated in that the concepts are related to each other, okay? It's agile in that you can build it iteratively over time, and it's business focused in that a business can look at this model and they can understand, oh yeah, I understand product and customer and component, and I understand the relationships between these. So it starts to abstract away from whatever your source system naming and object types are into these hubs, satellites, and links that everyone can understand, and it's easily supportable as well. So, let me stop there. Any questions? Let me look at if anybody's posted anything. Michael? Yes.
This is Kathy Wright. Another question.
Hi, Kathy.
Hi. So the hubs, does that help with, like, if I have like multiple data sources on customer and they all have different identifiers?
So that is part of what I would call the art of data modeling in Datavault. It's not necessarily a science, but what you try to do there is identify the business key related to those hubs, and hopefully that business key is the thing that relates them to each other in those different systems. Now, that's not always clean, and that's not always the case, and then there's ways to go about cleansing or mastering that data. That's kind of where the business rules come into play without getting into too much detail. Anybody else have insight or anecdotes around that they want to add? And thanks for the question, by the way. Did that answer your question, Kathy?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Okay.
Hey, Mike. This is Troy Henniger. Question.
Hi, Troy.
Back on the data security portion, for Datavault, is there a best practice in security by securing it either at a table level structure or data element, or can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I'd happily talk about that. Let's go back to this slide here where we talked a little bit about security. So I would say, actually, this is a question on our response. We're doing a little interactive survey. And so, Troy, that's a great question. I think I'd like to maybe defer to when that comes up. But in general, I would say, I think the best practice, my opinion, is the best practice is to implement security at the cell level. And you might say, well, how do you do that without, just getting into an administrative nightmare? And that's kind of the special sauce that, I'd be happy to have a conversation with you around. Actually, we've spoken to this audience on that topic in the past. And I can point you to that recording, but is it okay if we defer that until we get to that topic on the questionnaire?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Mike. This is Mike Planting.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, I have a question about we're using non-historized links, or they're also called transactional links.
Oh, yeah.
To model our transactional data, whether it's subscriptions or invoices, invoice lines. Can you, going back to your modeling overview, could you speak to, I guess, the importance of those and kind of how those integrate?
Yeah, I think the answer to your question is, first of all, let's define what a transactional link is. Dan talks about this in his Dan Lindstedt talks about this in his book and in his training classes as a way really to capture data that doesn't change. You record an event in history and you're not going to go back and modify that event. So he ends up building a link, a special kind of link that has some of the descriptive data right in the link. Okay, and that's, so are we talking about the same thing? First of all, is that what you meant when you said transactional link? You've got some. Yeah,
that's what I'm talking about, and we use it heavily for. We just want to capture the transaction for every single change that happens. So we're essentially not updating any of the records. We use effectivity satellites off of the transactional link to get that point in time tracking.
Yeah, that's a great, another great question and a great segue into one of the questions that we ask in the little poll that we're going to do. But I'll answer it at a high level, and then we can talk more about it when we get to that topic. And that is, yeah, it's very effective. It's a way of capturing history. I think I have a couple questions for you specifically about how you're implementing based on what you said there. But in general, transactional links are for capturing data that is recording an event in time that isn't going to change, or if it does change, it's going to be some type of an adjustment, right? An error correction, as opposed to some interesting historical event that changed that data. So you could think of like IoT data coming off of equipments, right? You might have your thermometer in your house measuring the temperature in your house at some point in time. Okay, so each record that comes from that thermometer is captured once and for all. All right, at noon it was 71 degrees in your living room, and at 2 p.m. it was still 71 degrees, but at 2 a.m. it's 62 degrees, right? Those types of events you would capture, typically capture in a transactional link. We do have a question about LSATs, or link satellites. If we talk about the satellites here, typically satellites hang off of the hubs. They describe a business key, right? But sometimes the transaction itself has historical relevance or significance. If you think of like a relationship between a teacher and a student, okay? Well, when that course ends or that year ends, that student-teacher relationship is no longer effective. So you might have a satellite on the link, right? If we move this line to the link, we'd say, well, the teacher-student relationship now ends. It's terminated. So it's no longer effective. So we would write a new satellite record to indicate that it ended on some date or during some event. So that's what an LSAT is, or a link satellite. There are people who avoid them like the plague. They say we don't need LSATs. We should make every transaction its own hub, and then hang your satellites off your hub, and then you don't need a special kind of object called an LSAT. Everything is a hub satellite. So that's kind of two different schools of thought. Anybody want to add any of their insight into that? or offer their views on whether LSATs should exist or not? Okay, well, that's a good question, and we'll ask the same question in the survey here that we got to get to in a few minutes. I did want to offer that there are some published standards out there, and some of them are comprehensive. I would say Dan Lindstedt does the best job of a comprehensive published standard, but they're constantly changing because this is an evolving practice. And firm, and Dan has actually started the Datavault Alliance. So first of all, Dan published some standards several years ago, and they're still available and they're free. And you can go to danlindstedt.com and find those. But Dan is now supporting and promoting the Datavault Alliance as the go-to place for Datavault discussions and standards. And there's a lot of good information out there, mostly in the form of blogs, posts that people post, and then there's discussions around those. And it's really good if you really want to get some good Datavault knowledge. The leading practitioners around the world are contributing on the Datavault Alliance. It is paid, but it's not expensive. And if you can talk your organization into doing that, this is my plug for Dan Lindstedt. And in a way, you're also giving back to the inventor, the guy who gave his life, really almost literally, has dedicated his life. He didn't give his life, but he's dedicated his life to this practice. Okay. So I highly recommend Datavault Alliance. Hans Holdgren and his team at Genesee Academy have dbstandards.com. They focus only on the model. So you won't see the architecture, the methodology. You won't see anything about really implementation. It's here's how you model a Datavault. And they focus on best practice. These are the academics of the industry. These guys write textbooks, okay? And I'm on the advisement team for them, and so we're able to contribute some of those standards. But again, this is a quote right off their site. It's an evolving set of standards representing best practices for members of the TVDE. So that's their version of Datavault Alliance, the TVDE. So you can go to DV Standards or datavaultalliance.com. Just remember, you're going to get a subset at DV Standards because it's focused on the model. Okay. All right. So now time to start discussion. And here's the topics that I put out there that we probably want to talk about. And first of all, let's talk about our development iterations. How are people going about their development? Then we'll talk about how you're doing automation. LSATs, the link satellites. Do you use them? Do you always promote to a hub? Or do you not really have any standard around that? You'll do whatever makes sense, right? Maybe you only use them for effectivity, okay? Multi-active satellites, I'll explain them a little more in a minute when we get to that question. Where do you define your business rules? Do you force them all into the business vault? Do some of them spill over into the infomarts? Or have you not decided yet? Are you still on the fence? How do you optimize? Obviously, building a data warehouse that we can't get data out of is troublesome. So there's optimization techniques like point and time tables and bridge tables, some of the advanced features of Datavault that, the 501 class in Datavault, those things are ways to optimize, or you can persist data downstream as well. Speaking of infomarts, do you generally create those as department focused or general purpose? And finally, security. This addresses your question, Troy, about what's the best practice in security. And I would say, I think I know the answer, but I'm also a little bit biased because we sell a cell level security solution. So, and if we have time, we'll get to naming conventions as well. So with that, if you could, I don't know if you can click on these links. I pasted these into the chat as well. So you can click on either one of them if you have to type it. I've made a tiny URL if you have to type, but if you could go in here, this is, it's almost, what would you call it? It's almost non-identifiable. You can put your own name in. So if you don't want to identify yourself, make up a name. But if you click there, you'll have to specify some name that you give yourself. And I don't think there's any other identifier in here. And if you start this survey, let's just jump into the first question there. Everybody all right with this? Any questions or problems so far? All right. So we can do one at a time here, but first of all is development iterations. Who thinks that they can get all the answers right the first time? They want to spend a lot of time doing your data model, and then you want to build it once, versus try something, see if it works, load it. If it doesn't, adjust it, build it again. And not surprised by this response. The reason people adopt Datavault is because it is iterative in its approach. So I saw a bold response there. We get it right the first time, and then it looks like somebody retracted their answer. So, and then it's okay to say, I need help. I don't know what you're talking about. Can you help us explain? And that would make for a good discussion. Any particular comments about this that anybody wants to make? We tried it one way and realized there was a better way. Anything like that?
Sure, Mike. I can join you a little bit here. This is Barry Lewis from United Heritage Insurance. I've got my counterpart, also Alma, on the call as well. We're kind of in our infancy when it comes to Datavault, and I struck out with another programmer of mine to do this in a manual fashion. I wanted to really understand the process, and obviously do it manually is one of the best ways of doing it. And we did an iterative approach. I don't know how many times I've just cleared the data warehouse entirely of all tables and all links and started from scratch, just because there's just a lot of different approaches, and I wanted to try it a few different ways with the data that we had. I'm very familiar with their data, which is helpful. And the way that Datavault allows you to have that auditability that Michael mentioned before is great. And that's really the key to understanding. Yes, I've accomplished something worthwhile, and I can proceed and go forward. And if I don't have all the data coming over, if I mess something up somewhere along the line, it's readily available and apparent really fast, and you can go back and kind of make those changes. So definitely I failed more than I've succeeded, but I've learned a lot through the process too, and I think that's important.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, there's that fallacy. I grew up as a software developer, and we were always told, gather all your requirements and then build something once, right? And that's a fallacy. It never happens that way. If you have infinite time, you're not you're not in a real business. So I see what you're saying, and I think there's a lot of wisdom in what you said there. It's a good. You also made a good segue into the next question, which is how are people building these? So if we go to the next one, from an automation perspective.
Hey, Mike, I would like to share. This is B.
Sorry, B. Yeah.
Yeah, for the development, as we have started with a 3NF model, that is a traditional data modeling. And when me and my colleague, we came across Datavault. Oh, I have never worked on the Datavault, but when we started, I got a training from Hans, and with your help, finally, our data warehouse is Datavault, is in production for one business unit. But we tried back and forth many times. It was not just in a single. It's been 1.5 years we were struggling, and finally, when it was reviewed by you, I was pretty confident. Okay, now we can get to next level. So thanks for supporting, and now it is in production. Business users are happy with it. We have applied business rules, but security wise, as we don't have much users, we are going with a schema approach and not with a column and row level security, but it is working fine for the time.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that, and thanks for the little plug there. That was not a paid advertisement, but thank you. And it was great working with the CWI team out there. And Bea did a great job. She presented 6 months ago to the same audience about how they built their data warehouse. When we say they, it was she. She is the data warehouse team, and so she was able to make a lot of progress with an automation tool. So thanks for sharing that. Let's move to the automation question. And great job out there at CWI, by the way. So from an automation perspective, and when we say automation, a lot of people think, oh, I'm executing my jobs with a scheduler. And I want to correct that. I don't want automation to be just that we're coding our jobs, but then scheduling them automatically. Automation is really taking this to the third degree, where you're building your objects, your tables, your ETL or ELT that loads those tables, and even your Infomarts and Business Vault objects, where you're building those through code generation. So we could say automation and generation here, where you're using templates and metadata to generate the code that creates and loads the objects in your data warehouse. And really, this is a match made in heaven. An automation approach with Datavault is possible because Datavault reduces the complexity of the number of types of templates that you need to about five different templates. You have hub, satellites, links, and then pits and bridges. So it's really nice to be able to automate these, and then it allows you to regenerate and rebuild, as Bea and Barry both mentioned in their little testimonies. Okay, so the question is, if you're automating, which I would hope you are, how did you go about an automation solution? Did you buy one? There's 3, 4, 5 vendors. There's more coming into the market. There's leading vendors. Did you buy one? Did you build your own? I've been there, done that. It's not as easy as it seems. Or did you? Are you starting, like Barry mentioned? Did you start by building it manually and you haven't made yet an automation decision? So it looks like about half of the audience has gone out and purchased something, and then the other half is either building their own or hasn't gotten to a point where they've adopted an automation yet. Anybody want to pitch in there or give us some testimonials of what worked or what didn't?
Yeah, I'll jump in, Mike. This is, again, Mike Planting with ClickFunnels. And early on, when we started the data warehouse, we were looking at Warescape, and for various reasons, we decided not to go with them. Specifically, COVID hit, so we decided to do some purchasing. But at that point, we decided to build from scratch. And our approach is we're on Redshift and basically have a bunch of Redshift stored procedures that will build hubs, links, satellites, and stage via a stored procedure. So you just pass in the parameters for the type of table you're building, the source where it's coming from, and it will dynamically go read DDL to build various objects. And so that took quite a while to build out those patterns, the Datavault patterns within Redshift stored procedures. And then I found another tool called DBT Cloud, which is primarily an analytics engineering type tool, data modeling tool, but you can use it to orchestrate the calling of those stored procedures. And there's control structures within DBT, something called Jinja templating, which you can use to follow that pattern-based automation to loop over various dictionaries to build out your hubs, links, satellites, and then to orchestrate the loading of those. And granted, it's been a lot of work doing it from scratch, but it's nice that there's a home for the patterns inside Redshift stored procedures. And then you have a pretty versatile tool in DBT to orchestrate the calling of those stored procedures. And also, from a data modeling perspective, it works really well for building the business vault through DBT on top of my raw data vault. And it works well with Redshift. So at a high level, that's what we're doing.
Great. Yeah, that it's a little bit daunting and a little bit maybe. Did you feel like it took you a long time to be productive? Taking that build your own approach?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, but I think I learned Datavault, and I learned a ton through the process because I had to struggle through, designing driving keys and building links dynamically, through my own code. So
Yeah.
I have a deeper understanding for sure. An automation tool would be much faster, but there's all these ancillary things, I think, around things like Wherescape, where you need to make sure you can replay archive data. Someone had talked about, dumping their data vault and rebuilding it on the fly. Well, you still need to take time to design replay from archive, and you need to take time for, data replication and, how do you dynamically get schema definitions, and all these little things surrounding the data warehouse, I think, take time behind the scenes, regardless of an automation tool.
Yeah, we call those all the pitfalls along the way.
Yeah,
right?
good work.
Things that can waylay you and keep you from building something that's valuable to your business to make business decisions.
Right.
Yep. Great, thank you. I hate to throw you or put you on the spot, but that sounds like a future topic. Is your journey? If you could present to this audience your journey through.
Yeah, for sure. We would love to.
Great. Yeah, thanks for plugging a couple of those other products out there. Like I said, there's some challengers in the market, and some of them are coming on strong. So thanks for mentioning.
Hey, Mike, I was going to say something here with the buy versus build. This is West Data. We had, I think, a challenge that we had with our current warehouse about some difficulty maintaining and supporting the warehouse we put together using SSIS.
Yeah.
And it was, it by and large did a great job. It was as templated as we could get. But I think Christopher Siegfried's on this call as well. I think he can speak to, we were looking at more automation to, eliminate the errors and some of the routines that we were doing by hand. Let's automate it. We are using Wherescape and getting some, seeing the benefits of Wherescape. But I told Christopher, I said, I really want more velocity, greater velocity in our ability to develop or to bring data to our business users. I want some sustainability, because sometimes, it's just a natural tendency. We have people that come and go out of our ecosystem, our organization, and I wanted some sort of sustainability so we could train up those folks and last us the stability so we can, make that work.
How's it
yeah,
working for you?
This is Christopher Siegfried.
Yeah.
It's working well. We're still getting started on our full Datavault journey, but we've really focused on Wherescape 3D, which is the graphical modeling tool they use. And we found that for the most part, we can get everything we need built from that with really stable model conversion rules. So we can have level 2s come in and model a source system, or at least parts of a source system. And we have a really strong testing framework that was a manual build set up behind that. So between those two steps, we can get a good 80% at least of the work done in a very short period of time, thanks to Wherescape 3D. There are some finicky things that you need to go in and adjust, and we have created some custom rules. But for the most part, we've had a lot of success using the graphical modeling tool and generating the model, our data vault, completely from that.
What do you mean by level 2s? You said you can bring in level 2s.
Sorry. So people not strictly at engineer level, so I wouldn't say entry level data users or database specialists, but people with a little more experience who maybe aren't quite as versed in Datavault or all the particulars of Datavault, they can still come in and really get the broad strokes done and see what changes they need to make from this GUI, from the modeling tool, as opposed to having to.
Okay. Yeah, so you get somebody with good business knowledge, but not necessarily a technical background, and they could build a business model. And with a little bit of oversight from somebody like yourself, then you can build out those objects in pretty short fashion with high quality. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah. That, I don't know if anybody's noticed, but there's a shortage of data superstars out there. Most of them are on this call. So that's a great point. If your organization isn't big enough to have an entire department of highly talented data engineers, that's all they do, the automation solution might be a good fit. Thanks for sharing that. And you said you did buy, right? You have the Warescape solution in-house there. How long have you been using that? Just for the record.
What do you think, Jeff? About 5 months now?
That sounds about right.
Okay. Anybody else with more or less experience than want to share part of their journey? I want to stay on this automation topic because I think it's so critical to building quickly and getting value in the hands of your users. That I just think it's a key topic. So if anybody else has any anecdotes, anybody have something that didn't work well?
I can chime in. Hey everyone, it's Veronica.
Hi,
fairly new, I
Veronica.
think.
From the East Coast.
I figured I'll share our experience. I come to you from Massachusetts. I have to say thank you to COVID for building links and relationships with people across the country and the world. We are actually in the build/manual stage where our pipelines and data ops and CI/CD is automated, but nothing around Datavault is. Okay. So it's been a little bit difficult trying to plug in what we need into what we have. We are, and it's incredibly painful. And so what we have right now, it's very similar to DBT. But what we're missing is, and I just wanted to give a plugin, DBT Vault. There is a free add-on to DBT. There is a team that creates it. I think they're in the UK. I've seen it like in the example, it seemed promising. So if you're not kind of in a place where you want to code everything by hand and you have DBT, please give it a try. I'm hoping that our data ops team will help us with some automation, because doing stuff by hand is incredibly painful.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. DBT Vault is, I would say, pseudo open source. So DBT is open source, and DBT Vault is is a solution that Neil Strange and his team at Datavault.uk built. Right?
Yep.
That sounds
familiar? Yeah. Yep.
Neil's a friend of mine that we do some cross work with across the ocean. So if anybody wants to know more about that, I'd be happy to point you to Neil and his team. Thanks for bringing that up, Veronica. And thanks for joining from the Eastern time zone. Still, so that's working for you. You said it's painful. So it's on the fence of what works and what didn't.
Let's put it this way, that the data ops team, their goal for Q1 is to make Veronica happy, which means that I've been complaining about it long enough that they're finally ready to do something about, helping us automate stuff.
Yeah. And okay. So you mentioned CI/CD. Any generation, any code generation that you're able to use, or you planning on?
So
using that?
we've written a store procedure in Snowflake that kind of spits out YAML for us because everything is in YAML. So that's our like kind of band-aidy, hacky step towards not having to copy paste and make sure there are enough tabs and spaces. My guess is we are in Snowflake, so we might end up in some sort of a metadata templating in Snowflake, like somebody prior described they had store procedures in Redshift. So that's what I'm thinking we'll do, but I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you. All right. Have we beat this one to death, or does anybody else have any final thoughts on automation? I think the other topics will be a little bit shorter, but that one's a key one. Okay, then let's move on to link satellites. So we talked about this. I'll bring up the model here for a moment, but the link satellites are in the model. That would be a satellite that hangs off the link that can be used just for effectivity, like just to say that that relationship is still active, or was for a time and then wasn't for a time and then was again. Or you could use it in general. You could say we allow link satellites in any case, or you could say we never use them. We always make that relationship a hub of itself. We make it a hub, like the order here, right? An order could just be a relationship between a customer and a product, but elevating it to a hub means that all the other attributes around that order allow you to track those as a satellite of the hub, as opposed to a satellite of the customer product relationship. Okay. I'm not advocating for making an order just a relationship between the customer and the product. I think that would be a wrong move, but I'm just using that as an example of where you have an object that you elevate to a hub so that you can track more detail about it as a satellite off of that hub. So that's kind of what we're asking here in this question is, do you never use all satellites? Do you promote them to a hub? Do you only use them for effectivity, or do you use them unlimited? There's no restriction. We use them wherever we think we have attributes that belong at the relationship level. And it looks like 50-50 here. Anybody want to break the tie that's contributing? Okay, so what's interesting here is that nobody said never. One of the modeling standards that I showed that was published a little earlier, one of those advocates for never using an LSAT. And I think that that's actually short-sighted, because I feel, and I think this shows, that most people think that they're useful. It's a satellite. It has all the attributes of a satellite. It just hangs off of a link rather than a hub. And I think, you might restrict those to say only do that where you just need them for effectivity. But sounds like we're kind of split on that. But what's overwhelming is that the support for using LSATs. That's interesting to me. I've seen the never promote to a hub kind of go hand in hand. They say never use them, promote that object to a hub instead, and hang that satellite off the hub. So it's not like they're saying that scenario doesn't exist. They just give an alternative way of modeling it. Any thoughts? Comments? Yeah.
This is Mike Planning. I was going to talk about the way we're using it, and at the risk of exposing our approach and maybe being corrected right now. So what we do is, the core idea of a link, right, is to preserve the relationship between two entities. And so what we've done is we'll have a link table for something, let's say like a charge, and it's a very narrow table. We'll have the hash key, the load date time, the record source, the hash diff, and then in the hash key, and I'll have the hash keys of the other hubs that it relates to. So essentially the foreign keys. But then the effectivity satellite hanging off of that has the effectivity dates and the metadata about that transactional link, so that we still have the optimization and speed of going through a very narrow link table that really just shows the relationships between those entities via hash keys, you know, maybe 5-6 columns. But in the effectivity satellite, it has the effectivity date alongside all the detailed attributes about, let's say, a charge or whatever. And that's the approach we've taken to really preserve what a link is. And a link should be very narrow. And then on the effectivity side, on the effectivity satellite hanging off of the link, it has all the detail with the effectivity dates, essentially being a non-historized link.
You got it. Yeah. So it would look like this, but you would have S link that only has a date. And, oh, well, no, you said a date and maybe some specific attributes of that.
Yeah, right. The effectivity dates live in the satellite, and the link knows how to relate back to the satellite through the hash key, the hash diff key, and that's it.
Great. Yep, I think that's you know, exactly a common use. All right, we're down to 5 minutes. Thanks for that input. Let's go through the rest of these real quick. Multi-active satellites. This is a satellite that has attributes about the hub or potentially link, but that multiple of those are active at a given time. A great example of this is key value pairs or labeled data pairs that you associate to an object. Some advocate for this, some advocate against it, and we're 50-50 split on here. I just think that, oh, so much for the 50-50. We had another input come in. So, you know, in general, you can choose, and this is an architecture standards decision, you can choose to implement them or not. They're a slightly different pattern. It's a slight different pattern than a regular satellite. So you do have to have a template for a multi-active satellite if you choose to implement those. Again, I've used them with labeled data pairs. If you think of, you know, you have color, size, shape, and something else hanging off of your product, right? And then somebody that wants to add another attribute, I don't know, size, shape, something else, material, right? T-shirts, they want to add the material. Is it cotton or rayon, right? Well, they want to add that on the fly, and you need to be able to capture that in your data warehouse. A multi-active satellite is a great way to do that. Any comments on that real briefly? Okay, business rules, where do you define them? Let's go back to our to this slide. What we're talking about here is your business rules kind of overlap here. You can create info marts that are specific to your business areas, or you can create general use info marts. But your business rules, you can either push those down into the business vault and reuse them, or you can implement them out here in the info marts, or you can do both. They can kind of slide around. I wouldn't say a given business rule slides around. You have to decide then, we're going to put this business rule in the business vault because it applies to multiple info marts downstream. So how are people doing that? In your info marts, okay, in both, still deciding. Yeah, so not quite the majority, but a significant number still haven't decided, and that is not uncommon. As you get into your maturity, you'll figure out what works for your business. Really comes down to how fluid or how consistent your business rules are. And if you can push them down into the business vault, you get a lot of reuse out of them. If you're implementing them in the info marts, you might end up copying them, or they might be different between different regions or different business units, in which case they'll get different answers from your data warehouse, which could be good, could be your intended purpose, or it could be bad. They might argue about which answer is correct. So still deciding, I think, is appropriate there. And I would say, you know, if in my experience, it's, well, both. It's what makes sense. Some business rules belong in the business vault because you want them consistent everywhere in your organization. And others belong in InfoMarts because they differ based on who's looking at the data. Comments? Okay, thank you for that one. Okay, we don't have time to get into what pits and bridges are, but we have to be able to get data out of our data warehouse. And virtual versus persisted, this should have been two different answers here. My bad on this. But you can create pits and bridges in the business vault, which is an optimization technique that Datavault teaches, or you can create another copy of your data in your MART layer. Okay, so that would be a persisted copy. I really should have broken out those first two answers so we could vote on virtual versus persisted versus pits and bridges. But all of these are right answers. There's no wrong answer here. And but I'm interested, who chose other, and what are you doing, if you don't mind sharing in 30 seconds or less? Come back to that. Are you creating general purpose InfoMarts or department focused? Looks like we're pretty split between those two. And then finally, data security. And this answers the question that was asked earlier. What's a best practice in security? And it looks like the lowest number, what I suggested was cell level security, and that's the lowest response. Some people are doing row level. Some organizations are still doing set level. So set level would be, I'm creating a report and giving access to that report, as opposed to creating a general purpose, giving access to given specific reports for specific sets of people, right? My CEO sees a different report than my, individual contributor sees. And that can work out of the box. It's just not a scalable solution. So row level or cell level security, a little more scalable. And then that poor 29% at the bottom, who hasn't had time to think about it yet. Okay. Next topic is, I guess that's the last one. So, and we are out of time. And all I wanted to say in parting is thank you for those who participated. Again, there are leading practices published out there. I'd like your feedback, please. And we will be presenting this or publishing this on YouTube. We still need a January topic, so I don't know if you can swing that at ClickFunnels, Mike, but the slot's yours if you want it. If anybody else has any ideas, let me know. And with that, we're out of time. Any parting comments? All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I learned something.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate putting together.
Thank you. I've stopped recording.